Welcome to another episode of the S.E.M podcast. Jack Bryce here tonight, and I'm joined by Charles Fife. How you doing, Charles?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on your show.
Where are you calling from tonight?
A little town called Parker in Idaho. Wonderful
Parker,
state.
Idaho.
Wonderful little farming community. Not many people know where it is, but if you say St. Anthony Sand Dunes, people typically know where we're at. But we lay more claim to the sand dunes than St. Anthony. We're closer.
Okay.
So that'll if it ever got out that I said that, it'll start a big controversy, I'm sure.
It's like we always say, this is the truth according to you. So whatever you want to claim on the podcast.
Well, from the book of Charlie, that's what you get.
There we go. All right. Well, we'll start off with any story leading up to getting the call, finding out you're going to Scotland, and then we want to know what you've been up to since getting home, and then we'll go back and reminisce a little bit. So, start us out with anything leading up to the mission you want to share.
Okay. Most of the guys that I served around knew this, but I was actually engaged with full-time work. I worked for my dad doing plumbing and heating work. So prior to the mission, I'd actually changed jobs and then went back to work for my dad. And leading up to the mission, if you recall, the war had broke out, and it was kind of a weird time. I remember a lot of talk at work about guys saying, gee, you better get your papers in before you get drafted to war, because you just don't know what's going to happen. So that did spur it a little bit. I always planned on going on a mission. And I met with the bishop regular like everybody else and got my papers in. It was kind of a weird deal because my bishop here, I was his first missionary. So going in and having interviews, he's like, I don't know what to talk about. How are you? How are you doing, Brother Fife? Anything we need to talk about? And I'm like, yeah, I'll even confess a little bit here. I'm like, yeah, Bishop, I have a problem sometimes swearing. I said, I'm pretty good cusser sometimes. And he says, well, I have cows, so what's your excuse? And I said, well, I don't have cows, but I mean, I work construction. He's like, well, you can't do that in the mission field, Brother Fife. And anyway, we had some good talks. Great man. Anyway, when I got my call, so when the time came, I was really hoping that it would be foreign, and I really hoped that it would be English speaking, because memorizing, learning things new never has been my strong suit. Not my favorite thing to do. So yeah, the night of getting the call, I remember opening my papers in front of family, and I'm not so sure my parents hadn't already opened it and revealed it. They were probably more excited than I was. And but I'm pretty sure that they had an idea where I was going. But I remember sifting through, like, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where am I going? Yeah. And I was really, really like, I'm going to Edinburgh, Scotland. And it was pretty cool, pretty exciting. My family roots are like so many others from Scotland. Fife, as you know, if you served around the Dundee area, Kingdom of Fife, that name's everywhere, and actually being in the mission there, a lot of people are like, oh, Fife, great Scottish name. I got so sick of hearing that. I heard that over and over again. I'm like, oh, here we go again. I've heard this before. But at least it wasn't a bad Scottish name, I guess. I got lucky with that. So, preparing to go on go ahead.
What was the timing of when you got your call and when you left?
So that was kind of interesting. I got my mission call. This I guess is going to tell you a little bit about me. I told my bishop I wouldn't put in my papers until I finished hunting season, like any Idahoan maybe would. So I ended up finishing my hunting trip, and if I recall, I got my game, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready. Let's put in our papers. And so my call, I want to say, came in February, and then my actual mission calling to go out to the MTC wasn't until May. It was around Mother's Day, if I remember right, or just after Mother's Day. Seemed like a long wait, but I know the foreign travel, getting all your documents and everything, it takes time. So
yeah, I'd say that's about average, like 3 months or so.
Sure. No, it was good. Timing was good. Everything about it was good.
Good deal. And what year was that? Was that 2002?
Yeah, 2002. So,
All right.
so since the mission, got back, I actually started my job after my mission. I got a job interview the Saturday after I got home, and I started work the following Monday. So no break for me. I jumped right back into work. Before I left, I was a journeyman HVAC technician. So I had opportunities to start work pretty much anywhere I wanted, and making good money. So funny thing, I got home and I remember my mom just drowning me with affection and wanting to hang out. And I'm like, I gotta get out of here. I can't live at home anymore. So as soon as I got home, I'm like, yeah, where am I gonna go? I gotta get out of here. And my dad had a kind of a studio apartment. He's like, it was just sitting vacant. My folks didn't have any money to do the work on it and renovate it. And I'm like, Dad, can I live there and work on it and turn it into a good rental for you so I don't have to be here?
There you go.
He made it work. So I did that, and then I had plans of going to Alaska. I was gonna go buy a camp trailer and just drive up the Alaska highway and go find work. But I ended up finding somebody and getting married, and we were together for 14 years, 3 kids. Tragically ended in divorce and remarried a couple years ago. So I've been remarried for another 2.5 years. My current wife is from the Philippines, and she is from the Philippines. So she's culturally a little different to mix a marriage and kids and everything with, but we do so well together. We're happy, and we do a lot of traveling and have a great time. Ended up moving back to my hometown, oddly enough, about 8 years ago. We lived further south of here, a few different places over the years, but I ended up back here in my hometown. Never thought I'd move back, but here I am. And
Never say
great.
never, right?
I know. Yeah, I know. Maybe I'm more of a homebody than I realized.
And how old are your kids now?
My oldest is 17, going on 18, really soon. My middle daughter, she is actually turning 14 here just next weekend. And then my youngest just turned 10.
All right.
So, yeah, they're spread out a little bit. All girls. Yeah. I couldn't make a boy, I guess. So nobody to pass on the name. Oh, well, huh?
I guess if they serve a mission in Scotland, it'll still be 5. They go back.
Hey, that's a young, good point.
Right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So cool.
So currently, I'm self-employed. I don't like working for other people. I learned that pretty quick. So since that was my trade, doing heating and air conditioning, I started a heating and air conditioning business in 2007, and I've been doing it ever since. So about
if you weathered those first few years.
08, 09, yeah, that was a good time. Yeah, I'm afraid that may be coming again. Who knows? It's kind of an interesting time in our country, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is.
Inflation's been a tough one for a lot of people. So, but
well, Charles, take us back to 2002, and usually we just walk through, from the MTC and then areas, companions, whatever you want to talk about. You've been called out a few times, so now's your chance to call out other people too.
There you go. Well, the MTC experience, that was not what I expected to start off with, I guess. I did make a few notes here. If you see me glancing down, I'm just seeing where I'm at.
Open book test.
So, go for it. I remember I'd never flown before in my life. Getting on that plane was pretty exciting and pretty uneasy at the same time. But met up with some missionaries in Salt Lake, and actually I flew out alone. There was another missionary from Idaho that was supposed to fly out of Idaho Falls Airport with me, and he never showed up. So I got on the plane alone, and then when I got to Salt Lake, I've never been to an airport in my life, and I'm like, where the heck am I going? I asked somebody, and they're like, oh, you're clear on the other side of the airport. And I'm like, oh, great. It was kind of funny running through the airport, and I was running. They're like, hi, Elder, hi, Elder. And I'm like, oh, hey, yeah, that's me. Anyway, finally found my group and ran into a missionary, Elder Cooper, that went out with us and in our group. And and he was there. So once I found out he was going to Scotland, I like, all right, I found my group. I guess I'll just hang out and see how this goes. And there was an Elder Lovelace, Sister Stanger, and there was a few of them. I can't remember all their names. There was a couple of Stokes boys from Utah. Elder, oh man, there was an Elder Jones. He got really sick actually and threw up after eating some bad McDonald's. I guess I think he was just nervous.
Boy.
Yeah, that was a kind of a funny deal. I guess all the missionaries we stopped in Chicago O'Hare on the way and had a layover, and I couldn't eat. My stomach was churning. I'm like, I'm not going to eat anything till I get on the plane. And all these guys go down to McDonald's and load up. I remember this Elder Jones. He was just wolfing down his dinner, and then pretty soon he grabs his bag and just threw it all up in this bag, right? And then he sets his bag down, and this missionary that was coming home was just trying to be a good dude. He picks it up and he's like, I'll take care of that. And the bottom blew out of the bag. And he's like, oh no, oh no. And he went back and forth with this bag, and it went all over these two brothers, Elder Stokes, luggage. So all their bags got bagged up with some garbage bags from the janitor closet. Yeah, it was all their carry on. It was so gross. I was glad I was nowhere near them at that time. I was so glad. But yeah, long flight getting into England, and then the whole MTC experience for me overall was pretty good. The small group was kind of surprising. You know, I'd always heard about the big groups in the Provo MTC, so going over there to Chorley and Preston, I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, you had a pretty big group going to Scotland, though, right? Like a lot of the MTC was, or
yeah, there was a fair amount of us, probably a good third of the group, I think. But I think the whole group in the MTC was somewhere around 45, 43, something like that. Some going to England, Ireland. I don't remember the total of it, but pretty big a group of us was on a train up to Scotland there once we got done. What is it, 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that at the MTC?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But no, it was nice. When I got off the plane and they met us there was a senior couple actually from St. Anthony, which is just 3 miles up the road from us. The Barretts. I don't know if they were there when you were there or not. Doctor. He was the doctor for the whole district. And ironically, he was my family doctor growing up. He actually birthed my sister, and I knew him like family. He's like, Brother Fife, how are you? You know, and I'm like,
small world.
What are you doing here? But he was just kind of a skeleton of a guy, really small, and he got the nickname in the mission as Dr. Death because he just looked like this feeble skeleton of a man, you know. And anyway, it was kind of funny to hear that after the fact, but. That was my first introduction to soccer to its extremes. We played soccer a lot at the MTC, and I remember playing keeper, and there was some girl from England. I'm like, oh, it'll be easy. She can't get past me. That girl kicked that ball right square in my boys like 2 or 3 times, put me flat on my face. I'm like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm out. Like, that is in one game to be hit right there that many times. I'm sure there's somebody that wrote that in their journal, but yeah, that was not a good experience for me. There was an Elder Hewlett from Montana. Felt bad because him and I we were playing soccer, and we both went for a header, and I broke his nose. He got in the way, and I broke his nose in the MTC. So I felt kind of bad about that, but I don't know if that's a relative to.
I don't know either.
You guys
we'll have to ask Zach.
Yeah, might be some family. That kid was from Dillon, Montana, if I remember right. So he got a little downtime. Didn't have to sit in class for a day at least. There was I remember one of the instructors there at the MTC was from England. And he had a really strong English accent, and if I didn't listen to him, I got lost like so fast. And I remember probably one of my most embarrassing experiences of my life. We're sitting in class, and I don't know what I was thinking about. I wasn't thinking about class. My mind was wandering. He was gabbing. And all of a sudden, everybody in the class is like putting their head down, saying a prayer. And I'm just like, oh, okay, I'll pretend to say a prayer. I don't know what we're doing and studying something. And then about 5 or 10 minutes later, I raised my hand and I'm like, so what are we supposed to be doing? Everybody just blew up. I'm like, yeah, I wasn't listening. Sorry. No disrespect, sir, but didn't understand. Anyway, it was good to get out of there, actually get off to the mission.
Yeah.
You know, that's a long time to be just sitting still. I am not
Yeah.
I am not one to be sitting at a chair for that long. It kills me. That's probably why I wasn't listening. Uh, anyway, not a big fan of the British food. So I think the first 6 weeks, I probably lost like 40 pounds. I did not like the food that much. It didn't sit well with me. Um, you know who Jim Gaffigan is, comedian?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember he made the comment. Yeah, in America we have to put ketchup on our food to make it taste good, and the Chinese, sweet and sour sauce, and British food is terrible. That was his comment. It took a while to get used to it. I think it took me 6 months before I finally I guess I have to eat this stuff, but I didn't have a palate for it. That's for sure. Um, Arrived at the train station. We were picked up by President Sister Marines and a couple office elders loaded us up in the vans. And one thing I'm not ever going to forget is I felt like I was just freezing to death. The humidity over there, from where I come from to there, night and day, and I
Yeah.
just could not get warm to save my life. Took a while to acclimate to that high humidity.
I was going to say maybe it took 2 years. I'm from the desert as well, and it's rough.
Yeah. Even in the MTC, I was like, "Am I sweating or What's going on? I feel like I'm wet all the time." It's just that high humidity. Not used to it. We got to go out. I remember that first day. I went out with an elder. See if I can remember his name. The office elder. No, but I'm not going to waste time thinking about it. It slipped my mind. Anyway, small little kid. He got put with me to go out and knock doors while they were sorting out, I guess, everything for the new missionary arrival, and we went out and knocked doors. I remember hearing some of the kids on the street talking that Scottish accent from Edinburgh. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. This is like Braveheart, This is exactly what I imagined. And then we got up to some doors, and we actually got in, I think, my first door approach, which was incredible. And this lady let us in and was pretty friendly. And I don't have a clue what she was saying at all. I don't have a clue. And I was like shaking my head and saying, yes, I'm sure, like an idiot. And my exchange companion at the time, he's like, she wants to know what your name is. And I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. Anyway, he's like, well, good job. We're going to go back and teach her. So good job, Elder Fife. I'm like, oh, okay, good. I got put with my trainer, Elder Rindlisbacher. He's from Payson, Utah.
Oh, that's a name I haven't heard yet. Good
guy. You need to get him on here. He's an outstanding missionary. Short little guy. I think his feet were like a size of 8. Tiny person. I had a hard time with his name, and he's like, just call me Elder Bacon. And then when we were in the store getting groceries, I saw Rindless Bacon. I'm like, I'm just going to call you Rindless Bacon. So the first few days of praying in the flat, I just, hey, thanks for Elder Bacon or Elder Rindless Bacon. And until I could say his name, that's what he was. But hard worker.
Where did you serve? Where was your first area?
So my first area was Montrose. Did you get up to Montrose at all?
I served in that, I think in the district up there. I may have been
Arbroath.
I think it was Sisters in there actually, though, when I was up.
Good area. I'm very grateful that was my first, because coming from such a small town, Montrose was an easy transition for me. We walked pretty much everywhere unless we went out to one of the outlying areas. But you want to peek in and say hi, Sneaky? My wife's going to say hi.
Hi. That's great.
but I swear it was like a retirement town. Most of the people there were senior citizens. A lot of sweet old ladies and old guys that would answer the door, and as you're talking, they just slowly shut it, and snub you out. Thought that was so funny. I'm like, what is going on here? We knocked a lot of doors. I remember actually finding a golf ball at some point, and I'm like, this is the best thing ever to knock doors. So I used a golf ball for I think the remainder of my time there. I ended up losing it, but I remember my knuckles were getting irritated just beating on doors everywhere we'd go. And I'll never forget the facial hair the women had from drinking tea. Do you remember?
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
I saw some outstanding goatees that honestly at that age for me put me to shame. I don't think they had a clue like what was causing it, but yeah, that was shocking sometimes to see that. We had a baptism actually the first week I was there, Victoria Bremner, and I was like totally getting this false understanding of what Scotland was really like as a new missionary, right? So my trainer's like, oh yeah, by the way, we got a baptism this week. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is probably normal. Probably gonna have one every week, it's probably normal. No.
Not quite.
Not quite. No, not really. So we baptized her, and then I remember after that, it was just like, what's going on with the work here, Elder? Like, there's nothing happening. And my trainer's like, hey, we met her in a charity shop, actually. It was a British Heart Foundation. They were over there working with these ladies and ended up teaching one. So that was honestly the only success story I had ever had from a charity shop.
That's what I was about to say. I think that's the first one I heard.
kind of a rarity, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I remember Elder Renlisbacher, after we'd been together for 6 weeks, we're waiting for that call for moves. He starts packing his bags. I'm like, so what are you doing? He's like, oh, I just have a feeling I'm going to get moved. And maybe he was sick of me. I remember he was packing up his bags, getting ready to leave. And then he got the call that he was staying. He's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, you all right? He's like, yeah, I guess I'm staying for another 6 weeks. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, man. He's like, oh, no, it's good. I need to go through my stuff anyway, make sure it fits in my bags.
Oh, man.
He probably, he didn't know, actually he admitted, he says, I didn't know what I was getting with a missionary from Idaho. We had some problems with these kids in the area. They're just cheeky little snots that, name calling, and we got called Jehovah's Witnesses and Jehovah's Bible and everything you think of with that. But these kids were so snotty, and I'm not used to being called out by little punk kids, but I'm not afraid of them neither. So we're walking down the street, and these kids are like kitty corner from us, and they just start getting ignorant, saying some stuff. And I look at my companion, and he's just like, just ignore him, Elder, and we keep walking, and I'm like, whatever. And I beeline up right to these kids. I'm like, man, Fife, get back here. Fife, what are you doing? And I'm like, I just ignored him and walked to these kids, and I got right on top of these kids, and I'm not that tall. I'm 5'10", but I could look down on these little 13-year-old, 14-year-old kids. And I'm like, boo. And I'm like, it's not what you expected, was it? And the kid just shakes his head no. And I'm like, we're not so crazy and weird, dude. Like, I know you think we're strange and we're odd. We wear suits. We wear name tags. We carry these things in our hand. I'm like, we're just like you, okay? And this kid's like, oh, well, where are you from? And after that, these kids were like our best friends. They'd wave at us, talk to us. We even had one day we're walking down the road, and they were talking to us, and the cops pull up, grab one of them, throw him in the car, and all these kids are like, we were with you last night. If they ask anything, we were with you guys. No, you weren't. Sadly, there wasn't a lot for the kids to stay out of trouble in that area. There was nothing for them. And I was thinking, man, if somebody wanted to contribute to that area, they could sure put together an event center, athletic center for these kids. But they just get into trouble, because they have nothing better to do. Parents aren't keeping track of them. But that area, I remember we knocked so many freaking doors. We ended up on a street that was rough, had a lot of success on it. And then when we reported in was it PEC and ward council. They're like, don't go down that street. That's the worst street in the area. I'm like, that's where the humble people are. They're like, yeah, but we don't want those people here. Didn't stop us. We had a great time. Knocking. It was Queen Street, but Elder Somerville. He was the next companion I had in that area. From I don't know what part of England, but him and we didn't get along the best. He was different, probably because he was British. I'd have to say I didn't get along with most of the British missionaries. A lot of differences culturally, and he was kind of a goofball. We still got along. We still worked. But man, when he drove me nuts, I couldn't help but sing the Battle of New Orleans as we're hiking down the road, knocking doors. I used to piss him off. Bless his heart. We're good now, but sometimes you get put in a companionship. You're like, is this really inspired, President? I don't know if it is, but
I may have sang that a couple times on my mission as well. So
that was my favorite song as a kid. So maybe that's why it came out a little strong. Poor Elder Somerville, that kid, he was one of those like, Doc Martens are the best shoes in the world, Elder Fife. And I'm like, yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that they're good. He's like, yeah, I've got steel toe Doc Martens. And I'm like, you sure that's a good idea? Steel toe shoes. He's like, yeah, nobody can hurt my feet. I get ran over. They're fine. Well, he ended up getting ingrown toenails so bad, he had to go to the doctor and get his toenails surgically removed in Montrose. And that really, that was probably, I don't think we were together longer than 6 weeks, but he was out of it for about 3 weeks of that 6 weeks. We couldn't do anything. And he ended up getting permission to buy some sandals from our growth. So we went into the district leader's area and bought some sandals so he could go knock doors. And he looked funny because he's wearing white socks with these black sandals, like you go to the beach in. And anyway, I'm glad he was willing to get out and work still yet, but I heard it got bad enough that he got it like gangrene and he had to go to the mission home and get treatment from the doctor and stuff. So it got pretty bad. So I bet he rethought about those steel toe shoes. You can get him on here and he can tell you all about it. But
I just can't imagine walking that many miles with that weight.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did something stupid. I wore both my shoes that I brought with me. No, I brought one pair of shoe on my mission. I'm like, hey, because I had the same thought. Doc Martens, that's where they're made, is over in the Europe, in the British Isles. I'll be able to buy them cheap. Oh no, that's not the case. The pound was like 2 to 1, or the dollar was worthless, so everything was really expensive. But I ended up buying a pair of Caterpillar work boots. And they held up incredibly well, but I got shin splints so bad, and I ended up tossing them. It was not worth it. Yeah, a good pair of shoes is worth the money when you're serving a mission. Anyway, I remember Elder Somerville got dinking around with the phones, and I remember he found a phone in the closet, right? You remember everybody leaving their garbage behind in the closets? Well, He got going through the closet. He's like, what's all this stuff? I'm like, I do not know. I don't dig in the closet, buddy. And he says, look at this phone. It's awesome. And I'm sure it came from a charity shop. And he hooked it up. And I'm like, well, I'm going to bed. So, make sure you just check in with everybody and see ya. Well, he fell asleep and he didn't get the call from the zone leaders and or the district leader. And eventually I'm in bed sleeping and we get somebody knocking on the door at like 2 a.m. It's the zone leaders. They come from Dundee, and I'm like, what are you guys doing here? In the middle of the night. They were so ticked off at him. They're like, why don't you answer your phone, idiot? And he's like, well, it didn't ring. And they're like, what's wrong with your phone? I don't know. Like, don't you know if you don't get a call, you should probably call? And the mission president's worried about you. Look, you got voicemails. You haven't even checked your voicemails. And anyway.
We heard that story from the zone.
Oh, crap. Really? Elder Shanath and Barnard. Yeah, it was.
I think so. It may have been the same thing with another companionship, but that's
Elder Barnard was from Seattle. I guess he had seen a lot of crazy stuff growing up in the streets of Seattle. So he was like, oh, what if they're dead? What if their throats are slit? Like freaking out while Elder Shanath's driving the car. He's like, he was fit to be tied when he got there. But it all panned out. We just, I'm sure, ruined their week with not getting any sleep that night.
Yeah.
Ended up getting moved out of there. Geez, I was in that area for 4.5 months. We did have another baptism, come to think of it. Elder Somerville and I had one. Kind of a crazy one. Lady was from Wales. Broke her back when she was a kid riding her horse. She hit a tree branch, knocked her off her horse, and I guess it severed her spine. And interesting thing about this lady, she had royalty blood in her. She actually showed me all her genealogy paperwork. And I'm like, so where's your family now? And she says, they abandoned me after I got hurt. I guess it was such an embarrassment to them to have this handicapped daughter that they literally just pawned her off on an orphanage, got rid of her.
Wow.
Horrible, horrible thing. Anyway, when we found her, she was actually attending and worshiping with the Jehovah's Witnesses. And after our second discussion with her, we did what we were supposed to do and just dropped a baptismal commitment. And she said, if it's true, I will. And I'm like, oh, hey, we're moving right along. This is awesome. So the weird thing with her, she couldn't be baptized backwards because of her spine accident. So Elder Somerville baptized her, and he had to do it forward. And I think he had to get her on her knees in the fountain to do it, the baptismal font. But kind of cool, but
yeah,
kind of a different one. I don't know what's become of her over the years. Haven't had contact really much with people in Montrose since. Come to think of it, but great area. I do miss it. I actually haven't been back to Scotland. You made it back over there, visiting?
I went. It's been 13 years now since I went back, but I did go back once with my wife just before our first was born. So
good for you. You know, that's
it's
our goal.
It's on the list to do again with the family.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Gotta go back and have some of those doner kebabs. That's what I miss the most. I think the Turkish kebab. I always look forward to that. Doesn't matter how broke we were, we always managed to come up with enough money to buy one every few weeks, I think. But
yeah.
So let's see. Next area would been Hamilton. Yeah, you remember that area, right? I think you were. Was it you was in Hamilton?
Zach was in Hamilton.
Zach, okay.
Yep.
Good area, but tough. That was the outskirts of Glasgow. That was not a good place for Elder Fife to be. That was way too city. I got put in companionship with Elder Piersky, if I remember right. He'd been there, I don't know how long. We had a really nice flat. I remember that place was all electric, no gas, and it looked brand new. Really, I was an upgrade from where I came from. The flat we were in had been in the mission a long time. It was pretty wore out, but finally had a good bed and cozy little place. But the work was going pretty slow. There was some problems that took place there, and Elder Piersky ended up getting moved up to Shetland. So we weren't together long, and I won't go into any details about that. That's not necessary. But good guy from Mississippi. One thing I did get from him is his biscuit and gravy recipe. So still got my hands on that. We did have a good time while we were together, and had a lot of teaching opportunities, as I recall. But we ran into some scuffles with some kids in the area. Rocks and fireworks and bottles of Buckfast tossed at us. Remember, he got drilled with a bottle of Buckfast when we were knocking doors one day. And that was in an area that we tried to go back and could never, ever seem to get there without this gang of kids coming after us. So we stopped. But Elder Sweat got moved in. Now, that's a guy you haven't had on your podcast yet, right?
Not
Elder
yet.
Judd Sweat?
Nope.
Well, I'll put some pressure on him for you. We don't talk much. Good dude, total cowboy. He'll have some good stories. Him and I were not an inspired companionship by any means. I think it was just circumstantial. We were way too much alike, got along way too well, but more like brothers, I would say. Some terrible things. I don't know if I should even say half the stuff that went on, but We were walking down the road. I remember one day the stinking rain was so bad and nobody was opening the doors to us. And you could see people looking out the windows at you. And we're walking down the street. And you remember the rain would hit you so hard, it'd go right through your suit. And you could feel water literally running down your leg and into your shoes.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was one of those days I'm like, this is stupid. What are we doing out here? And I'm like, but we'll just carry on because that's what we do. We're good missionaries. And I look over at him and he's just kind of zoned out. And I don't know what got into me, but I decided to start splashing him. So as hard as I could, I started hitting my foot sideways and shooting puddles up at his face. And yeah, I ended up with him and I chasing each other up and down the street. And there was family proclamations and Lamb of God cards all up and down the street. We littered the whole street. It was not good. And at one point, we got a little bit rowdy, and he was one of these guys that he had to have the last shot. Okay, so if you were going to do something, you just at some point you had to let him have the last shot, or it will never stop. And so I finally let him have the last shot. And I look at, and right then somebody's looking out their window at us, and I'm like, all right, buddy, we got to be done with this. We are not becoming of missionaries right now. Let's just go. Let's go do something else. I don't know what we ended up doing, but it was hopefully out of the rain. But yeah, we got into another scuffle in our apartment, him and I, and it's just something stupid. I think it started with me throwing a potato at him or something. And we had this bowl of, I think it was walnuts, like nuts you could crack with a nutcracker. Pretty soon all of them got thrown across the apartment and the rest of the potatoes. And I think following by some dishes, like some pots and pans.
Oh, my.
And then at one point I peeked my head around the corner and he threw a bucket of bleach at me, like a pan full of bleach. And he just doused me, like my hair, I'm like, oh no, like my hair's going to be bleached for freaking zone conference, idiot, So I hurried and went and got in the shower and rinsed off. I'm like, you could have blinded me. He's like, oh, whatever, you'd have been fine. And yeah, it got a little rowdy. I know Elder, good grief, why can't I think of his name right now? Clark Davis. Him and Lance were serving together in Glasgow City Center at the time. And I believe Lance had served there in Hamilton before, and he knew Winifred Terrett. So we all got together around Christmas time. I hope that was sanctioned. I don't know. They hopped a train and came and saw us in our area, but him and Lance and Sweat, I think, came out in the same group, and they got in a scuffle in the apartment. And Lance, great big dude, and Sweat was like a dwarf. I mean, not super tall, but I remember watching him. He jumped up on top of Lance and just started punching him in the face like 10 times. And I'm like, oh, this isn't good. And Davis and I were just out of the room, like watching them go at it. And then pretty soon Lance just totally like slammed him and wailed on him. And I remember they went back to their area. We played some games this Christmas. We played some games. They went on their merry little way. And then that night we went to a Christmas mass with Winifred at her church, and Sweat had like Neosporin all over his face and all these cuts. And she's like, what happened to Elder Sweat? And I'm like, Elder Lance and him. She's like, boys, freaking boys. So funny. Yeah, he was a few days healing up on that.
Goodness.
Rowdy bunch. But Hamilton, outside of Winifred, wasn't really a happening place. The work was slow going. Caught a lot of first discussions. Didn't see much happen there. Guy Fawkes happened for the first time in mission there. What in the heck is that? Mortars? Holy cow! Yeah, I'd say illegal fireworks, but they're probably perfectly legal there.
Legal or not, that's what they were shooting into the buses.
Oh. Yeah, all the bus rides, huh? That was my first exposure to marijuana. Was on those buses. Kids lighting them up. Yep, I remember my first year with Elder Rindlisbacher. I got high for the first time, I think, in my life, and he's like, "We are not teaching. We're going back to the apartment." He says, "You are high." That was funny. Secondhand, that's terrible. Well, yeah. I don't know what else to say about Elder Sweat. You're gonna have to get him on here though. Oh snap! I do remember something funny. So Elder Laurie, it was Elder Rindlisbacher's companion prior to me showing up and beginning my mission, right? So that baptism was his that I took over.
Yeah.
So when I moved into Hamilton, he was the district leader, and he was pissed at me, like, "You stole my baptism, you punk!" And I'm like, "Dude, like, circumstantial. What am I supposed to do about it?" And he's like, "It doesn't matter. I still hate you." And I'm like, "Oh
Dang.
my heck!" Oh, him and I, we became pretty good buddies, but we had some awesome soccer matches there. Kids from all around would, members or not, come play soccer in the rain, snow. It didn't matter. We had some really good games on Saturdays. But I remember Elder Laurie. He was big into sports. He's living over I think he's in California now. Still big buff guy, works out all the time. Remember, he was racing after the soccer ball and ended up airborne somehow. And his cleat ended up hitting this kid's head, cut his head open. And this kid ended up riding the bus home with gauze wrapped around his head.
Man.
I'm like, yeah, I might need to settle down a little bit. We sometimes get a little too rowdy. Our game playing. Let's see here. Oh, so yeah, another stupid thing that happened in Hamilton. We got together and played a game, a drinking game, with 18-cent 2-liter lemonade from the store. Horrible stuff. Horrible. And water. Oh, these guys we're flipping coins and downing drinks. I remember I drank like an absurd amount of lemonade and water that night. I had upwards of like 9 pints and 10 cups, and I peed all night long. All night long. But amid all this was the kind of game of you pee, you're out, or you throw up, you're out, right? This is one of the dumbest things we could have done. So we're playing this game. Elder Laurie throws up first. No, he peed. He had to pee. He was out. I think I was the next one out. I kept getting bad shots, and I ended up being out, and I threw up in the toilet trying to drink my last go. And Elder Sweat was so excited to get back in there. He hurried in the kitchen, was cleaning this cup. He's like, "Just in case you threw up on it, I got to wash it, you know." And so he's in cleaning it, and he broke it, and it carved up his hand. And we end up in the ER at, 10 o'clock at night as a district. He ended up getting a bunch of stitches, and everything was good, but so dumb. Of all the dumb things we did. Yeah. But anyway, to be honest, I was pretty happy to get out of Hamilton, and get into an area where I felt like things were a little bit more happening.
Were you just in Hamilton one move?
No, I was there. I think I was there for at least 3 months. I think Sweat and I both got pulled out at the same time, and they whitewashed it. Okay. If I remember right. It just, things weren't happening. We ended up, I don't know where he went. I ended up getting moved to Ayrshire with Elder Oliver. That was a nice place. Ayr, to this day, is probably one of my favorite areas that I served in. It's kind of strange, but the weather was so good, and it was probably just the time of year, but it would rain every night, literally every night. And then during the day, just sunny, nice. I'm like, yeah, this place is actually fantastic. And I remember the first P-Day, I threw on some shorts and went outside. We went down to the post office. And all these people were just staring at me like, what is this guy doing wearing shorts? But it was so nice. I'm like, yeah, this is like summer back home, showing off my white legs. And all these old people. Finally, one of them's like, "Son, you're going to get a cold." I'm like, "What? You can't wear clothes like that. It's too cold." No, it's awesome weather. That ward, things were moving along pretty good for the missionaries there. They were teaching, and there was Elder Thomas from South Africa was there, and Elder Jenkins as well. I don't know where he was from, but I believe he's living in Wyoming now. You had him on the show. You had them both on the show.
Yeah, we've had both of them,
and Oliver for that matter.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they actually had a party. I think it was the first week that I was there, where the missionaries were doing a stand-up singing competition. That it was the whole ward was competing. It's imitating some British show. I don't like Singing with the Stars or some dang thing. But we dressed up as the Beatles and went out and sang "Can't Buy Me Love" by the Beatles, sang our guts out, and we ended up winning it. So they made us go back and sing it a second time. So that was a very, very good unifier as a district. You know, it was a nice way to break the ice with the members.
Yeah.
Trying to remember some of the people in that area. Don't remember much about it. Just remember I liked the area. Saw deer for the first time. I remember I could see Ireland from a distance when I got real far south in my area. The one thing that was kind of interesting, we talked about Christian reformers, you know, when it comes to Christianity, and that actually was an area a lot of them were from. You get down in the lower ends of that area, down to like Mabel and Bar Hill, you'd actually run into signs where it talked about Christian reformers were hunted down and hanged or burned at the stake, and that's where a lot of that history came from. John Knox was from there.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was fascinating to me. Oh gosh, yeah, I made some notes here. It's pretty good. So we were encouraged to go on exchanges with members, get members involved in missionary work. And I remember the ward was on board, the bishop was on board, and he had a list of this bishop was big about missionary work and ward missionaries. So if there was a new convert, you're a ward missionary now. All the kids before they go on missions, you're ward missionaries now. So I'll bet you in that ward we had at least 12 to 15 ward missionaries that we could call on and go on exchanges with. So we thought, let's get going on this. And so we went out on exchanges, I remember, and I got put with a member that I guarantee it was a drug dealer. Guarantee it. I know the family had a history, and there were still some things going on that the bishop wasn't aware of. And I remember, I'm like, hey, let's go. And he picked me up in his car. And I'm like, man, that's a really nice car. Like, how does this guy afford this nice car? And I'm like, oh, whatever. So we go. He's like, hey, where are we going? I'm like, well, just let's go south. Let's get down there and in some of the south area. And I got some homes I want to go knock on and see if people are home. All right. We get down there. And he's like, well, I can't be here. Yeah, people will kill me if they see me here. I can't be here. Like, oh, well, that would have been good to know, before we came here. So I guess we won't be knocking doors here. He's like, yeah, I can't show my face here. We got to get out of here. And he just kind of like slumps down as he drives through town. And
oh man.
And he says, I know where we can go. And I'm like, okay. So he literally drives back within a block of my flat and takes me in a diner and ditches me. He's like, hey, grab a soda or something. I got to go take care of some business. And he ditches me, just walks out. And I'm like, what the heck? So
That's
I waited
not how
around.
this works. Yeah.
Yeah. I waited around for like 15 minutes and I'm just sitting in there. I didn't want to pop. I didn't want anything. I just wanted to go out and work. And he didn't come back. And finally I'm like, what the heck? So I just started walking to my apartment. And about the time I got to the parking lot right outside my flat, he pulls up in his car. He's like, hey, what you doing? And I'm like, well, I was headed home since you just kind of bailed on me. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. I just had something I had to go do. I'm like, hey, well, maybe we could try doing some things together, and not be all rogue. And yeah, well, hey, let's just go back to my house. We're waiting for your companion to show up. And I'm like, yeah, let's do that. Went back to his house, same thing, just drops me off at his house, ditches me, takes off.
Oh man.
We were just crazy stuff. Elder Oliver, him and I, we were like oil and water. we didn't do well together either. There were some things that happened there that I won't go into detail about either, but I remember I was ready to kill him and he was probably ready to kill me, but the mission president was able to sort out some things and split us up pretty fast. So we didn't kill each other. And yeah, he did run away from me a lot. I remember hopping a train without him going home. We had some companionship problems, and I won't go into any details there. He's turned into a great man, and I enjoyed hearing him. I'm glad to see his accent came back. He when I met him, I'm like, so where are you from? California? Because he had about the strongest American accent I'd ever heard. And he's like, I'm from England. And I'm like, no, you're not. And I said, where's your accent? And he says, well, I lost it. And I'm like, you lost your accent. You're not even that far from home. And he says, yeah, but he said, I've been around missionaries from the States too much. And it just rubbed off on me. So funny.
Wow.
He got, even the locals made fun of him for that. But ended up getting Elder Porter right after him. And I think we were only together about 6 weeks. And Elder Porter and I, we did all right together. We got some teaching in, knocked some doors. It was actually, he was the one that was there when I did the exchange with the so-called drug dealing member. But yeah, he was around for that. So I haven't really seen Elder Porter or talked to him since the mission. I don't know if you've had him on any podcasts yet or not.
I don't think so.
I know we're friends on Facebook. He's going through a divorce right now, so he's probably needing a break from the world and figuring out life. That's a tough thing to go through, and he's been married a long time too. But hopefully he'll get things figured out and stay strong. That was a tough time for me too, so I get it. But let me check my other notes here. I made a bunch of notes the other day on my phone. Sure. Great people, members. Man, there was the Sharkies, the Deweys, the Brooms, the Hamiltons, awesome members in Ayrshire. That was an area I got well fed. I can honestly say. Do you remember parts of your mission that you just did not get dinner appointments?
Yeah, it was a little bit feast or famine, it seemed like.
Oh, we ate like crap on the mission. Like I remember buying Tesco bread for like 20 cents a loaf, and my trainer, he was into these cans of spaghetti. Horrible food. And then pasta. Everybody ate pasta like crazy because it was cheap and you could stay alive on it, I guess. Oh, horrible food. But no, they took good care of us in Ayrshire. We had some good dinner appointments. Elder Richards, I had something really cool happen with him. And you've had him on the podcast. That dude was like walking, living Bible bumper. He could memorize just about anything he read. He actually did all the memorization in the mission and then ran out. And then they actually had him help write up some of the script for the missionaries to learn.
Oh,
and
wow.
then he's like, what do I memorize now? They're like, I don't know, start with the Book of Mormon and then maybe the Bible and just do the whole book. Like he's got one of those photographic memories, you know. Everybody was jealous of the knowledge he had. But I remember Elder Thomas and him got put together. So Elder Jenkins must have got moved, and Elder Richards got put in his place with Elder Thomas. And Elder Thomas was going through some of the same problems I was with. He had a European companion, and they butted heads, struggled, differences. And he's like, I need a break. I need to go on exchange. So we swapped for a day or an evening or something. And I said, what are we doing? And he says, well, we got a lady we've been teaching for quite a while. We've taught them all, her and her daughter, all the discussions like 3 times, and we just can't get them baptized. And I'm like, so we're going to go there and teach? And he's like, yeah. And I said, well, I'll kind of just watch what's going on and see if I can pick up on anything. And so I remember Elder Richards was teaching this lady, and she was a good friend to a less active member that was in my area. And so I knew him kind of just through the friendship. Yeah. So we go in there, and they knew about me and my companion, and it probably more than they should, but very, very friendly. And I just kind of sat back and I watched Elder Richard go into his lesson, and I'm watching this lady's concerns, and you probably picked up on this as well. You could identify who was a Catholic and who was a Protestant based on their concerns. For whatever reason, their concerns would drift with the religion, I noticed. And this lady, I watched her bounce back and forth. 1 minute she's a Catholic, then the next minute she's a Protestant, and then she's a Catholic again. And this went back and forth about 6 times. And I'm at Elder Richards, I'm like, does he not see what's going on? And he like keeps addressing the concerns and pulling out the scripture, and he's doing a great job. And I remember sitting there and I'm like, Heavenly Father, what is going on with this lady? This isn't making any sense. And as plain as you and I talking, I heard a voice say, her problem is she doesn't want to quit coffee and tea. And I'm like, oh. And right then I said, hey, let me stop you, Elder Richards. And I turned to this lady and I said, do you know what your problem is? Your problem is you don't want to quit drinking coffee and tea. And her jaw just drops. And she looked at Elder Richards and says, I'll get baptized next Saturday. That was it. We got her committed for baptism, just like that.
Wow.
That just, discernment was real. That was one of the few times I experienced that in the mission.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. It was outstanding. Let's see here. Got through them notes. I don't need to get into that. Man, I had some tough time with companions. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of my mission was dealing with companions. I remember calling up President Wilkinson. I'm like, can we do something different? Like, can we put me with somebody else or move them or move me? Like, this isn't working. And he's like, Elder Fife, sometimes your mission is in the mission, if you know what I mean. I'm like, you talking about my mission is my companionship? He's like, yes. And I'm like, I don't remember signing up for that. I remember he yelled at me one time. I called him up. I'm like, come pick up your boy. I've had enough of him. And he's like, he's not my boy. And he got all irritated by the comment. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. I didn't mean it like that. I wasn't challenging the president. Yeah. But I ended up getting moved to Shetland after Ayrshire, it looks like. Everybody loved Shetland. They got to go there. Kind of funny that my companion got moved there just recently before I got moved up there, so got to follow him around a little bit.
Yeah.
Shetland was kind of different. You know, if you recall the area up there when I got moved up was Elder Summer, Skylar Summer. Great, hardworking missionary, a great reputation in the mission for being a really good missionary. The dude, I don't think he had a baptism his whole mission before he went home, but a lot of people knew him. At Winifred Terrett in Hamilton, that was his find. You know, he knocked doors into her. Everything that started with that lady. So he did a lot of good. I trunked him out though, and I remember we were at the grocery store in Shetland one day on our P day getting some groceries, and he was infatuated with looking at toothpaste for some weird reason. And I was getting so bored. I'm like, dude, just get one and let's go. And he's like, oh, well, I want to get some good toothpaste. I'm going home soon. I want my teeth to look good. And I'm like, whatever. I'm going to go get something else. So I went a couple aisles down to get some food and ran into a lady that we had taught. And this goes back to the whole stay with your companion. Yeah. Yeah, as soon as I bumped into this lady, we got banged shopping carts. I'm like, oh, hey. I even remember her name was Radina. And she's like, hey, Elder Fife. She's like, I really like your eyes. Man, I like your eyes. And I'm like, yeah, I like yours too. Have a great day. Like, Elder Summer, come on. We need to get groceries and get out of here. But
oh, man.
That area, that was the smallest apartment I'd ever been in. Oh, my gosh. Bunk beds. Freaking bunk beds. I did not fit in the top bunk bed, all right? Feet hanging off the edge. That was miserable. That place was so tiny. I remember even the shower in this place. You get in the shower, if you drop the soap or anything, you had to open the door to the shower, get out, pick it up, and get back in there because there was no room at all. It was this tiny little apartment. We had one of those clothes dryers that would trap the water, and you had to drain it after every time you did a load of laundry. And our neighbor downstairs was this elderly retired lady, and she was so hot and bothered that we were doing laundry without a clothesline. Yeah, I'm not going to hang my garments up on the clothesline. So she's like, you guys need to use the clothesline. You're wasting so much energy, and I hear your dryer running all the time. And I'm like, well, I mean, we need to dry our clothes. We don't have time to babysit laundry, lady. You know, we got work to do. And she's like, well, you need to use my clothesline. So just hang your clothes up out there. And I'm like, I'm not doing it. I mean, really, what do you got to wash as a missionary besides socks and your garments, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
There's not much happening. But Shetland is it's funny. Elder Summer went home pretty soon after, and I got Elder Lehman from Germany. And that was the transition time was kind of interesting. Elder Summer flew out to Edinburgh on the plane, lucky dog. Usually we had to ride that ferry, which was 14 hours, and then catch a train everywhere. And I remember he was pushing President Wilkinson. He's like, hey, why don't you get me a plane ticket, President? You know, he's buddies. And the president's like, well, think about it, you know, and he got him a plane ticket, flew him out. And then Elder Lehman got to fly up. But there was like at least 24 hours there. I was all alone. Nobody. So I may have snuck I didn't have a driver's license, but I remember I did sneak the car to the gym. I did go work out, and that was about it. I remember walking down the street. I didn't go knock doors or anything. I just got outside. Probably should have stayed in my apartment, but I remember I went out walking down the street and like, man, this is really, really not a comfortable feeling.
That would be weird.
It was super weird. Yeah, we work in a bed and breakfast up there, and not really charity work. I mean, we didn't get paid for it, but we didn't have anything to do. You couldn't go knock doors in the morning in Shetland. People would be irritable. So I guess it had kind of become a tradition over the years, and I think the elders even lived there for a while at that bed and breakfast. And they just kept a good relationship with these people. So we'd do laundry. We'd go up and wash beds, and sometimes you end up washing people's personal laundry. Super awkward. Some of the guests, you're like, here, Elder, you wash it. You know, I don't want to do this. Oh, no.
Oh, man.
You touched it first. But yeah, the Howarth, I think was their last name. Joan and Trevor, they would trade groceries if we'd work there at their bed and breakfast. They would buy our groceries anytime we needed them. They also were the ones that would pay for the ferry tickets for the missionaries to go to zone conferences or back to the mainland. And then I think we got that reimbursed, but I don't know how it all worked out. But sure was hard that was a challenge in the mission, getting your money to go very far. I've never been so poor in my life. You know,
yeah.
Go to the ATM and what was it, 40 pounds every few weeks is all. That's what I'm remembering.
I think we got it was like 3 pounds a day. But
is that what it came out to?
Wasn't much.
No, it wasn't.
Especially if you had to buy a bus pass or ferry or something and wait for the reimbursement, you were kind of out.
So it's funny. I'm going to go back for a second. So I remember Hamilton. You know, I had moved into Hamilton. I just got moved, bought groceries, got settled, and I was waiting on those reimbursements to come in. And I'm pretty sure Elder Piersky got moved before I even got those reimbursements. It wasn't long that he was with me. So maybe we were only together a couple weeks. And I remember Elder Sweat came in, and he had to move from Shetland, and he didn't have any money. And all of a sudden, like, we're laying in bed, and it's wintertime. There's actually snow on the ground every once in a while. I remember we were laying in bed, and I had this little light on an outlet next to my bed. And him and I would always race to see who could get to the shower first thing in the morning. I don't know about you, but in the morning, I was wiped out till I took a shower. You could not put me in front of scriptures without falling asleep unless I'd had a shower. And so, I'm like, you know what? I got to get the shower first. So we were doing this little thing, who gets up earlier in races, and I remember an electric shower. Everything in this apartment was electric. And I remember I woke up and looked over, and that light on that outlet was out. And I'm like, we don't have any lights or anything today. No power. And so I just went back to bed, and I heard him get out of bed and go, ha, 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 I'm going to beat you today. And he ran in. And he come back. He's like, we got a problem. we don't have any power. I said, yeah, we're out. And that is a problem because we have to go down and buy power tickets.
Yeah, the tokens or tickets.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I had never been in an area where we had to do that until there. And so when it ran out, and we went down and spent the last of what little money we had that day, got power tickets. So sacrifices had to be made.
Yeah.
So yeah, we didn't have any toilet paper for a couple of weeks in that apartment. So I'm like, what are we gonna do, bud? And he's like, oh, church news. Collect all the church news you can find and just rub it between your hands, and that's what you'll use for toilet paper for the next couple of weeks. Elder Sweat's like, I got this figured out, man. So
Been
yeah,
here before.
probably back home. Yeah, that was a kind of a funny story, but Elder Lehman. So back to Shetland. Elder Lehman was pretty quiet, so it was kind of lonely for me being there with him. I felt like I carried all the conversation, and I'd be like, "Hey, dude, what do you want to do today? Like, do you want to go downtown? Say yes. Okay, well, let's go do that then." And that was kind of how he talked. He would talk in teaching situations, but he was very quiet, very neutral until he was put in the corner where he had to open up. And he had a very strong accent. Super good dude. We at the time that we were in Shetland, we got to see the branch finally get an actual building. They converted one of the local historic buildings into a chapel. So we got to be there for the open house of that and the dedication. Before, the members were just meeting in a mobile home, little trailer house, if you will. And it was pretty rickety, lousy old building. It had a decent piece of ground. And we had to go mow the grass and help do the yard work on it every once in a while. There was a local branch member. His name was Bob. And he used to be the town drunk. Remarkable story for his conversion. People in the town respected him. They're like, your church, if it's done any good, it's seen in this guy, because of what he was before he joined the church to what he is now. Everybody knew him. So he was a pretty neat story for the town and the church to see that change. But Bob, he was I think in his head he was like a wrestler. He's a big guy, but I think he was stronger in his head than he really was. And he's like, hey, who's going to get to use the weed eater today, and who's going to be mowing, and who's going to be raking? There's 3 jobs. And he says, so who wants to do the weed whacking with the weed eater? I'm like, well, I'll do it. And he's like, but I want to do it. And I'm like, well, okay. He says, you'll arm wrestle me for it. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Just so you know, I used to arm wrestle a lot back home. I'll take you. And so we went and arm wrestled on the concrete wall, and I beat him pretty fast, pretty easy. And he looked at me, he got big-eyed. He's like, 2 out of 3. And I'm like, okay. Then we arm wrestled again, and he looked at me. He's like, were you a farmer back home? Did you do farming? And I'm like, no, I wasn't a farmer. I was a pipe fitter. I did plumbing and heating. And he's like, I think you were a farmer. And I'm like, no, I wasn't a farmer. Well, anyway, we did the yard work of the church grounds. Sunday, he shows up to church in his arms in a sling. And I'm like, oh, no. I heard him. And the branch president came up, and he's like, Elder Fife, come here. And he says, you see Bob over there in a sling? I'm like, yeah. He says, there's something you want to tell me about? And I'm like, he wanted to arm wrestle. And he's like, yeah, but, it's Bob, and you got to be nice. And I'm like, I beat him, and I thought that was it. And he wanted to do it again. He's like, yeah, well, maybe just take it easy next time. Like, I thought it was. I didn't put the hurt on him. It wasn't that big of a deal. And anyway, went up to Bob. I'm like, hey, I'm sorry about your shoulder, your arm. He's like, oh, you didn't do this to me. I'm like, well, what happened? Well, I don't know, but it wasn't you. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. Whatever. Poor guy. I did feel kind of bad about that, though. The work in Shetland was pretty slow. We did travel around a lot of different areas. One day we went across to there's a little island right close to Lerwick. So when you come into Lerwick in the ship, you go into the port, and literally across the port is where this other island is. And I'm like, we've never been over there, never knocked doors there. And I'll bet you there's not 10 houses. So the bad deal about it is you get there, you might have a couple hours of knocking doors, and then what? Then you got to wait for a ferry for, half a day.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things. I'm like, we should at least try it. So Lehman and I went over there, knocking doors, and I'll never forget, this lady came out of her house, and she was talking to us like, I'm not interested, guys. Don't worry about it. You don't need to knock on my door. I don't want to talk about religion. And then right then her door went click and shut behind her, and her eyes got huge, and she's like, oh no. And I lost it. I just started laughing so hard. I mean, to me, that's freaking funny. That's karma right there. I'm like, so you sure you don't need to hear a message from us today? And she's like, this sucks. This sucks really bad for me. I'm like, you literally can't go anywhere. You're stuck in front of your locked house. And I look over, and her window was open. And I said, I'll tell you what. I said, you'll hold my suit jacket. I'll crawl through your window, and I'll go unlock your house. But you have to say that's okay first. And she's like, you would crawl through my window in your suit? I'm like, yeah, I'll crawl through your window. Unless you say it's not a good idea. There's nothing that's going to bite me or cut me or whatever. She's like, no. Well, all right. Yeah, that's fine. So I crawled through her kitchen window and ended up unlocking her house for her to get back in. She didn't have a key. She didn't have nothing to get back in. It's kind of funny, but kind of an icebreaker.
Yeah.
I can't help but think, despite all the little stories and things that happen like that throughout the mission, maybe what happened with the next interactions people have with somebody from the church,
Yeah.
I think about a lot of instances of just little things like that where people at least got to see the real side of you, apart from, selling God and Jesus on the streets or at their door, that, hey, that is a normal person that's a Christian or whatever. But when I was finished up the Shetland area, Elder Lehman, there's a few things that happened with him. I felt like I was raising a boy, making him a man. We had a lady that would give us whole chickens, and I don't know much about the experiences that Elder Lehman had growing up, but I grew up hunting, fishing, hiking, camping. I was always running to the river when I was 13 with my shotgun and hunting alone a lot of times, and I had probably way too much independence growing up here because it's just that kind of an area. And Elder Lehman had like no exposure to any of that. And I remember this lady would give us these chickens, these just bone-in whole chickens. We're not gourmet chefs. What are we going to do with a freaking whole chicken, And so we would take these and we would cut them up, make curry out of them. And I remember I got this chicken, and he looked at me like, what are we going to do with this? And I'm like, you ever cut up a chicken before? Like, you ever carved up, deboned, and done this? He's like, nope. I'm like, well, grab a knife, get over here. We're going to learn how to cut up a chicken today, Elder. And so we're chopping up this chicken at the apartment and made a nice meal out of it. And then one day, I remember we were out knocking doors, and this guy answers the door with his phone in his hand. And he like looks at us, and he gets back to his phone call, and then he takes his phone away. He's like, you guys want some fish? Like fresh caught ocean fish? And I'm like, yes, we do. And he's like, well, if you go down to the pier right now, one of the boats came in, and they had a poor cast. They're just going to give it to everybody that wants it. And I'm like, are we in our suits and our ties? And we're going to go down to the pier and get some fish. All right, let's do it. So Elder Lehman and I drove down to the pier and walked down the pier, and everybody thought we were like policemen, I think, at first. And then, you always get, are you the police? And they're all looking at us kind of weird. And anyway, I said, are you the guys that came in with the bad catch today? They're like, yeah, do you want some fish? I'm like, sure. And I'm like looking, and I'm like, I don't even have a freaking clue what I'm looking at. I'm not used to this kind of stuff. I'm used to trout, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what would you recommend? And the guy's like, try the mackerel. Mackerel's really good. And so he gave us a couple of plastic bags, just started throwing these mackerel in. I think we got 10 or 12 mackerel that were, good size. And I'm like, so what do you do with these? And he's like, well, just fry them up with some seasoning and some flour. And I'm like, it doesn't sound any different than what I'm used to. We're good. We got this. So we take these fish and leave, and Elder Lehman's looking at me like, what in the freak are we doing? And we went around the pier to the coastline and found a beach and stopped. And I took these fish down and I said, okay, I think I handed him like 10 pounds out of my wallet. I'm like, go to that hardware store and buy a knife. And he's like, you want me to go buy a knife? I'm like, yeah, I gotta clean these fish. I need a knife. I don't have a knife. He's like, okay. And I'm like, you get a good one. He comes back with an X-Acto knife like you use for cutting open boxes with those little breakable blades. You know, you come out, you break it, gets dull, you break it. And he hands this to me, and I about come unglued. I'm like, what the heck is this? And he's like, well, that's a knife. And I'm like, no, it's not. This is a box cutter. And I like flick the knife blade all the way out, and it come out about that far. And I'm like, if this doesn't break off, it's going to be a miracle. But oh well, that's what we got. So I took it, and I'm gutting fish and throwing it out to the seagulls in my suit. And we get this done, clean them out. And I think I showed him how to do it. He did a few of them. And then we took him back to the apartment that night, and we cooked up a couple of them. Not that good. I'm like, I don't know if we did it wrong or what, but that's not my favorite. So we wrap them in tin foil and put them in the freezer, and I don't think anybody touched it probably till they gutted that apartment. They're probably still in the freezer months later. Not pleasant.
Yeah.
But it's all about the experience.
Probably still there.
Yeah. All about the experience. Remember Elder oh heck, what was his name? He was in the mission presidency. He was from Paisley. Know who I'm talking about? I swear the guy sounded just like William Wallace when he talked, or like not William Wallace, like Sean Connery when he talked. Yeah.
No, I don't know.
Oh man, I'm drawing a blank too. Anyway, he showed up to Shetland kind of unannounced and did a spot check on her flat. That's the first time I've ever had one of those. And we were pretty good at keeping the place up. But he came in and he's like, that hood above the kitchen stove's a mess. Of course it was. Nobody's ever cleaned it, How many years? Been here, 10 years? And he's like, that needs cleaning. I'm like, you mean thrown away? I was kind of challenging him. So I'm like, I don't want to spend my whole freaking P-Day cleaning this stupid thing. But it would have taken all day long. And he's like, Elder Fife, it doesn't matter what you say. You're going to clean that, and you're going to make it look shiny again. And I'm like, okay, you bet. And he's like, by the way, get some new beds. Your beds suck. And I'm like, yeah, you're telling me I have to sleep in a bunk bed. And he's like, well, at least get some new mattresses because there's no room for 2 beds in that room. Anyway, so he put some pressure on the landlord for us, but that was like the next day was our P-Day. And Elder Lehman's like, what are we doing today? I'm like, oh, apparently we're scrubbing a hood on a freaking stove, so I guess we'll take turns. And I'm like, you know what? And I just go back to my childhood. I'm like, I used to clean my dirt bikes, my frames with like WD-40, degrease them, right?
Yeah. And
I'm like, open up the cupboard under the kitchen and tell me what's under there. And he's like pulling out these cans, and I'm like, hand me that one. Let's see what's in it. I'm like, diesel has diesel in it. I'm like, yeah. Sprayed it on there. It cut right through it. We had that thing cleaned in probably 20 minutes flat. I mean, it stunk to high heaven. So I'm like, well, let's kick on the hood and open the windows and let's go down to the beach for the afternoon, and that's when we wrecked the car.
Oh man.
Yeah. We got out of there. We headed to we did have plans before all this happened to go down to, there's a really nice beach where there's a sand bridge that goes between 2 bodies of land. And I'm like, yeah, let's go sunbathing. We tore up a sheet. We went down there and threw it on the beach and like laid out in the sun sunbathing. And that was a good experience. The wind blew and it's like shell sand just blew in our faces and all over us. Like not pleasant. But it was a nice day. It was pretty. We chased some sheep. And anyway, we got in the car to head to a dinner appointment. And Elder Lehman talked about this. So there was a single lane road. And then they had pullouts so you could avoid oncoming traffic. Yeah. So he come up to a blind summit and he was boogieing. And this car on the other side also boogieing. And we just about had a head-on collision. Last minute, Elder Lehman cranked the wheel to the right and we went launching off this road into the rocks, and brand new Corsa that Mission just bought. And we got out of it. We got back on the road, but we bent the wheel. I mean, it was destroyed, bent. So we had to change it and put our spare tire on. And I'm like, we could fix this. So we went up to the bed and breakfast and talked to Trevor, and Trevor's like, I got some sledgehammers, you could probably fix it. We're out there beating on this wheel with sledgehammers, straightening it up.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we got it fixed. I'm sure it wasn't perfectly balanced, but it seemed to work. But that was our day. It was interesting. Did you ever get to go up to the islands at all?
I didn't. Zach was on Orkney for 4 weeks, but I never made it up there.
Kind of a weird deal to be on an island and be in a district where your companions are your companionships are split up like that. You never see each other. District meetings, like, how was your district meeting today, elders? You know, did you have a meeting? You don't do much more than just check in on each other. We had the Stornoway elders, and I know they had a lot of challenges with Sundays where swing sets were locked up on Sundays, so the kids couldn't use them, and so they just hung out with members all day Sundays. So there wasn't a lot going on for them when we checked in Sundays, but we never did see another missionary till I guess zone conferences. Then it was a 14-hour ferry ride going down. I talk about Shetland a lot because I was there for 6 months.
Oh wow.
In fact, the mission presidency changed while I was there. Wilkinson's went home, and the Marines came out, and I thought for sure they forgot about me. I'm like, I'll probably be here till they remember where I'm at, but I hit close to 6 months. I'm like, I'll probably be here for a while yet, and then I started hearing stories that the Marines were keeping missionaries in areas longer than the Wilkinsons typically did. President Wilkinson, I think the longest he kept missionaries in one area was 3 months, maybe 4.5 at the most. And then I heard stories that President Marines was keeping some for like 7.5 to 9 months in one area. So a lot of differences between the two presidents. I did finally get out of there though, but and those ferry rides, miserable. Poor Elder Lehman. We would sometimes if we got our tickets to go south, we go to Aberdeen on the boat, and it's an all-night 14-hour ride from Lerwick to Aberdeen and back, another 14 hours. So we'd spend on a zone conference trip, 28 hours on a boat. And you don't sleep on them boats, man. I was always tired at zone conferences. Those boats rock. And if you're in a cabin where you actually get to have a bed, it's pitch black. You shut the door, turn off the lights, it is pitch black. And I swear you don't know if you slept or if you're just staring at the ceiling. Because you still feel the movement, It's weird. But I remember we went down one time and we unfortunately didn't reserve a room in time. So they put you in a common area, which it's like riding in an airplane. All the seats are uncomfortable. They're sitting next to people, and you get to recline very little. And I remember it was rough, and these kids were puking all over the place. And you'd see these parents, these little bags, with the barf, and they'd go dump it. And I ended up ditching my companion, and I went into the back of the room and laid on the floor, tried to get a couple hours of sleep. And then on another trip, it was our first one. So we had two trips where it was bad weather. And I don't know how you rate the winds. They call it gale force winds. It was a 9. And so it just sounded like these ships were being beat to death by these waves. You just hear it just boom every few minutes as a wave hits the ship. Boom. And there was garbage cans rolling down the walkways of the ship. The chairs in the dining room were falling over. You go to the bathroom and there's water sloshing out of the toilets. It was rough. And Elder Lehman disappeared on me. I don't know where the heck he went, but he was not feeling good. See, he did not have his sea legs yet. But he bailed on me, and I'm like, so I'm going looking for him in the bathroom. He's not in the bathroom. That's when I saw the water swishing out. And finally, he came in. He'd been out on the deck outside. And I'm like, where were you? He's like, I was outside. I'm like, how come you're all wet? And he's like, it's raining, and there's big waves hitting the ship, and everybody was running to come back in. I'm like, well, let's go back to our room. And this is the one time we did have a room. And we go in there, and I'm like, "You don't look so good, bud. You're kind of white in the face." And he's like, "I don't feel good." I'm like, "Well, you cannot puke because this room's tiny. If you puke, we are going to smell it all night long." And I'm sure I wasn't very supportive, but he was in the bathroom just kind of hanging over the door threshold next to the toilet. I'm like, "Buddy, don't do it. Just fight it. Don't do it." And pretty soon, he just starts barfing. I'm like, "Dang it, dude. Now we have to smell that all night long." Oh, that
man.
was misery. Absolute misery. Uh, Shetland was interesting. You've seen the Shetland ponies, right? Everybody's seen a Shetland pony.
Yeah.
I didn't know the history about Shetland ponies in relation to the islands. And the whole time I was there, I'll bet you I only saw 4 or 5 of them. I mean, they're not there. But I finally got a little history on them. They used to put these, they almost look like fish nets, but they were a carrying type sack they'd put on their backs, and they'd haul peat, like peat moss. They'd go out and cut squares, dry it, and that was their fuel for their fires, their fireplaces, keep warm. And so they'd dry it and they'd carry it on these Shetland ponies. That was their job, just pack animals. Anyway, I had a couple of them I'd go feed every now and again. We had one area we'd visit a lot, and there was somebody had 2 or 3 Shetland ponies, and they'd come out and I'd feed them licorice about every time I'd go down to that area. It's kind of my little tradition. Like my pets, right?
There you go.
Pretty good time. Man, I don't know where else to go with this. Gosh, I got moved out of there and got to go to Glasgow again. Yeah. So President Vreens finally got a hold of me. That was a surprising call. It was in fact, I think it was snowing the day I left Shetland. I was so excited to get out of the weather. And he moved me down to Dumbarton. Dumbarton was a good area. Elder Bradbury was my companion there. I was trunking him out. He was a zone leader. So I got moved into a zone leader position. There was nothing happening. Elder Tuckett was his companion, and he got sick the last stint of his mission before he went home. And he's like, Tuckett was, in fact, I didn't want to be in his bed. I got there, you end up inheriting everything that the last missionary left you. I swear I was just being left with sickness. Like, I'm like, that was his bed, huh? Yeah, he was in that for like 3 or 4 weeks, really sick. And I'm like, oh man, I think I flipped the mattress over and like sprayed Lysol. And you see it, and Elder Bradbury's like, yeah, you're gonna want to do that. Yeah, you're definitely gonna want to do that. So I spent the first day, I think, in Dumbarton just cleaning the flat, so it wasn't conducive to getting sick. My first day there, we're walking down the street, and we passed this guy, total cross-dresser, dude wearing a dress with a 5 o'clock shadow, right? And I'm like, huh, wow, this is a new place, new area, new people, new trends. And then Elder Bradbury's like, yeah, he's a member of the church. I'm like, what? I'm like, does he go? No, he doesn't go to church. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that'll be interesting. Yeah, somebody just had some personal lifestyle changes, I guess. And anyway, it was different. Soccer games. We got back into soccer. There wasn't really much in the way of soccer in Shetland. We had a Clickerman Center where we got to work out. That was the best part. We had a gym we could go to twice a week, and it was cheap. It was like £2 each time you go. So you got to get in some good exercise, good equipment, gym equipment. And the members, I think we played 1 or 2 games of soccer the whole time I was there. But going back to Glasgow, that's where that happens. The youth love their soccer games. So we had some pretty epic soccer games back there in Dumbarton. Elder Anderson, I was going to call him out. He knows he needs to get on your podcast. Elder Kevin Anderson. He's from California. Do you remember him at all?
I think we crossed paths for a second, but we've definitely heard of his name a lot on here. So you're right. He needs to get on.
When I was a zone leader there, he was like this punk kid from California, wavy hair, surfer guy. And I'm like, what are we going to do with this guy? Because he was an older missionary. I think he was like 24 years old in the mission.
Yeah.
But anyway, ironically, we're pretty good buds now. He lives in Rexburg, just 8 miles south of me. Has a very successful business. He did a startup with him and his wife there. They're international with what he's doing, and just a super good dude. Funny, I was doing a sales call for my company, doing HVAC, and he had reached out wanting our company to come give a bid. And I went, and when I went knock on his door, I could see the Scottish flag, the St. Andrew's cross hanging on the wall.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, this will be an easy in. You know, I can talk about Scotland to whoever comes to the door. He answers the door. I'm like, what in the heck? And he couldn't remember me. I knew right away who he was. But we do a fair amount of business together, and pretty proud of where he's gotten himself over the years. So you'll have to get him on here and hear his story.
Yeah, give him a nudge for us.
I will. I'll bug him. I'll bug him about it. In fact, I ought to give you. I'll text you his email address, and you can pin him down.
There we go.
Get him on here. He needs to do it. So Elder Bradbury and I, the work was slow. We ended up doing what we could, and I was trunking him out. So he trunked out his companion, and then I got to trunk him out right behind him. But he was a good dude, hard worker, very humble. We got along really well. We remember we were knocking doors one night in the rain. I'll never forget this. It's one of the funniest things. We went down this long driveway, very ritzy neighborhood. And I remember there was a lot of trees in the driveway, tall conifer bushes and a lot of vegetation. You couldn't even see the house from the road until you got right up on it. And as we knocked on the door, got turned away, we're walking back out, and I'm like, Elder, I have got to relieve myself. And so I'm just going to go in the trees right over here and just take care of business. And he's like, oh, good. Me too. I got to do the same thing. So we both dive into the trees and take care of business. And we come out of those trees and we get out to the street in the street light. And he goes, oh, man, I knew that didn't sound right. And I'm like, he just pissed all over himself. It's just all down the front. He ends up getting on his knees in the street. And he's splashing himself, trying to rinse off.
Oh, gosh.
So funny. Thank goodness we were done for the night, but yeah.
Man.
We had a good time. I think we had members in Gairloch Head, which lived right on the River Clyde that come in. That's where the Navy ships would come in and out of port. So Paisley, I think, was on the opposite side of the river, if I remember right. So we were on the north side, Helensburgh. Anyway, around at the bishop's house, having dinner, and his daughter offered to drive us to the train station. So she's like, yeah, get in the back. I'll drive you down to the train station. So we get in the back of her car. At least I got in, and then all of a sudden her car started rolling backwards, and she wasn't even in her car yet. And it's headed right for the lock, right for the river. Freaking safety for the kid lock is engaged. So I can't even... And she's trying to get her car key in the door to unlock the door, and I'm like, I look back and I'm like, oh, we're going to be in the river drowning here in a second. I ended up climbing over her seat and pushing her brake with my hand, like in the nick of time before that car went off the edge of the ledge into the river. And she finally got the door open, and she's like, good thinking. I'm like, that wouldn't have looked good. That would have looked really bad in the news, you know. But kind of a crazy deal. Oh man, what else we got here? Elder Webb. Yeah, you just had him on not too long ago. Elder Webb from Canada.
Yeah.
Elder Webb, he was kind of funny. I didn't know what to think of him. I'd seen him at zone conferences and stuff, and I just knew he was a little different and didn't know what to think. And I remember when he became my companion, I'm like, what am I in for with this guy? What an outstanding guy, though. Convert to the church, honestly, just a little over a year before he served his mission. Found that out about him first day he was there, and I just was blown away. Incredible to see somebody go on a mission that just recently joined the church.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of obstacles to overcome, having been brought into the church later. So he was also one of the older missionaries, I guess you could say. He was in his close to mid-20s, you know. And, what a what a super good dude. He's been through some hardships too with divorce and trying to raise kids, and it was neat. I finally was able to catch up with him a couple weeks ago a little bit. So I've been trying to find him on Facebook ever since I got back, and I guess just recently he finally got back on social media. He was taking a break from it, but very passionate testimony he had. It always impressed me. Like, he was black and white with the gospel with people, and he wouldn't take no for an answer because it was kind of offensive to him. So it was kind of a little bit of a challenge sometimes to, like, calm down, elder. It's going to be okay. Don't take it so personal. And, so he's a little tender still yet. I know he doesn't remember this, but him and I we were instituting a new program, and I think this was Elder Lovelace had talked about this, a program to get the missionary program with members so we're not knocking doors so much. And the effort was kind of underway, and we had just had a meeting with the mission president, with President Breens, to get this program underway. And I know there was some pushback with the members in a lot of areas. And in our ward, there was some pushback. And the ward mission leader was also the second counselor to the bishopric. He was filling both duties. And I invited him over to our flat. I said, why don't you come over so we can have a meeting and talk about how we want this done? And so he did. He showed up. He said, so what's up? And I said, we have this new program. It involves the members, and we need your help making appointments. Get it scheduled. And he says, well, that's not going to work. I said, what do you mean it's not going to work? I said, you saying that people won't answer your phone calls? What are you saying? And he's like, well, no, a new program. Programs don't work. It's just not happening. The church is dying here. It's not growing. Nothing's going to change. You can't make a difference. Like, Elder Webb's face just went bright red, and like he was ready to just tackle this guy. And I'm like, I just pointed at him. He turned around, went back to the bedroom, shut the door. And this member of the bishopric, I'm like, I had to send Elder Webb away so he doesn't thump you. But I'm like, buddy, all you have to do is make phone calls. I'm not asking you to do anything. Just make appointments. And yeah, it was a lost cause with that guy. But it's just funny to see Elder Webb's nature come out, though. Like, yeah, he was very stalwart, very, very good dude about that. A lot of good members in that area as well. We did have a couple baptisms. Elder Webb mentioned this. We had a lady that we were working with that Elder Bradbury and Elder Tuckett had met and taught, and we just carried on where they left off with her. But she had some respiratory problems with her lungs. She was on a little breathing machine. I can't remember what it's called. Nebulizer. That's it. So she had to get nebulizer treatments, and it kept her from going to church. So the whole criteria, they have to attend so many sacrament meetings and meet the members, and it was tough getting her there. And I'm like, man, what do you do? Like, she's ready, she's wanting to do this, but we just can't get her to church. So I offered her a priesthood blessing, and she said, yeah, sure, I'd love whatever help I can get. So we gave her a blessing, and it's the first time I've ever seen a non-member witness the Spirit and feel that. And then she recognized it when it was gone, right after we would finish the blessing. And you'd see her just beaming, smiling, and then she's like, it's gone. And I'm like, what's gone? She's like, that feeling, it's gone now. I'm like, oh, the Holy Ghost. Like, yeah, you can get that when you get baptized. And she says, I want that more than anything. So we ended up giving her a couple blessings, one with the stake patriarch from the ward, and then that time. But Elder Webb mentioned that was an eye-opener to him too. I mean, that was a miracle that we witnessed.
That's really cool.
Her husband was a chain smoker. Imagine we're trying to quit smoking when your husband is 5 feet away all day long, and I'm like, it's kind of hard. Can you not do that? Well, I'm not going to quit smoking, but she can do what she wants, and his hands were like green from the rolling the tobacco, and you'd see him after a while. He'd sit in his chair and he'd shake because it burned his hand. He burnt the tips of his fingers from his cigarettes. I ended up, I guess she had cartons of cigarettes even for him in the cupboard. And I'm like, is it a temptation for you to get in the cupboard? And she's like, yeah, of course it is. And I ended up giving her one of my name badges, and I'm like, we're going to glue this to your cabinet door. And every time you open up that door, like, you're going to know that Elder Fife is not impressed with your decision. And she did. I assume to this day, if she's still alive, she still has it. But I don't know if that was a no-no, giving out your name badge or not. But
Sounds like a good idea to me.
yeah,
It helped.
that's what I did. Now, we had another member of the church that was in the same bishopric. And he meant well. He just had a strong personality. I remember we approached him like, hey, let's see if you can help us do missionary work. Let's work together. And he's like, you can't teach me anything. I already know how to do all this. And he says, there's nothing that you can teach me that I don't already know, Elder Fife. And Elder Webb's like, how about humility? So funny. No, he lives just north of where I live by about 8 or 9 hour drive. I'll have to hop up there sometime and say howdy, catch up with him. So, Elder or President Vreens, he had spent a little time in Glasgow area, driving around, trying to get to know the area, meet the priesthood, the stake president, and I had a chat with him. I said, the zone leaders are in Dumbarton, and it's a great area, but city centers where everything happens with exchanges of the missionaries coming and going. And I'm like, it's really kind of inconvenient that we are clear out here in the country and we got to come in here, deal with all this. And it's where we end up going for all our meetings and stuff anyway. And he's like, so what are you saying? I'm like, well, maybe the zone leaders ought to get moved to Glasgow city center. Insert foot in mouth, Elder Fife. Yeah. Oh, well, I'm going to move you. So pack up. I'm like, can't we wait till the next zone leader, President? Nope. You're going to do it right now. So we got moved to Springburn. So Elder Davis and Elder Lance, I think that was where they were some months before. And so I called Elder Davis up. I'm like, all right, spill it. What's it like in Springburn? He's like, oh, lots of fights. Yeah, lots of riffraff. He's like, watch your back, Like, yeah, it's just great. So busy place, but it all panned out. I survived the city, but I did not enjoy it. I didn't want to be in Glasgow city center. So
you and your companion moved into there?
No.
You just transferred
over? I got transferred over. Elder Webb stayed in Dumbarton, and then I got moved with Elder Hattenden. They made him a zone leader, very, very young zone leader, in fact. So him and I ended up starting in Springburn in the city center.
I would have come in there. Well, I came into Cumbernauld, and Pattenden was my zone leader shortly after that. So.
Oh yeah. So who was your companion in Cumbernauld?
Cade Schmidt. That was his second companion. So you probably just missed him. Elder Quick was there before me.
Elder Quick, yeah, I remember him. Yeah. Good dude. Yeah, I think I went and worked in his area at some point. Remember he made this horrible curry when I was there. It was like Uncle Ben's instant rice. That's terrible stuff. And that's what we got stuck eating. That's what made it nasty. But yeah,
Pattenden's another one we need to get on here, though.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he ought to have some stories. He was, I don't know, he was dealing with some health problems when he was my companion. I don't know if it was diabetic or what was going on. He would like fall asleep in every teaching assignment we did. If I, when you get ready to hand the discussion over your companion, you teach, you testify, you're like, Elder, and you just kind of, and I'd look at him, he'd be like, and I'm like, all right, let's hop back in this discussion again. And I ended up teaching a lot, and I'm like, are you doing okay? Like, what's happening? And there's something was up. He got a hold of the mission president, and Sister Breens got him some help. So after that, I was sent north to Peterhead. Peterhead. Good place.
Yeah. I
Spent
did serve there.
Did you?
Yeah, I trained.
So-
Actually, I trained Zach there. So
Oh my heck.
we were both up there.
Yeah, President Breen's called me up and he's like, last 6 weeks, where do you want to go? I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, anywhere you want. I'm like, even where I've already been? He's like, wherever you want, man. I'll send you there. Not Shetland, obviously. Be too costly. And I'm like, well, I'd like to train. I went my whole mission without training. And so my last 6 weeks, I'm like, can I at least train somewhere? And funny enough, he's like, oh, you haven't trained? I didn't know that. Yeah, we'll get you training. And so I picked up a missionary from Vernal, Utah, Elder Allred, and I ended up whitewashing and training him in Peterhead. So
There you go.
yeah, it was pretty good time. I was still working hard to the end, especially while training, but I was probably a lot more relaxed in my daily studies and making it more focused on him and making sure he was settling in. I'd cook him biscuits and gravy for breakfast and making sure he was not getting homesick. But we got a lot done and met some good people. Got a bunch of first experiences out of the way, with the crazy door approach situations.
Yeah.
I didn't have I never got my driver's license, and that was a car area. So I remember I was at the mission home sitting down to dinner with the Marines and the rest of the trainers. And I'm like, hey, President, is that a car area? He's like, yeah, it is. I'm like, so who's driving the car? I guess Elder Allred will be driving the car. And I'm like, okay, sure. So we left there, and Elder Allred, I don't know if you'll come across him much. I heard he got sent home due to some health problems pretty early in the mission. I think pretty sure he was a diabetic.
Yeah,
I
think
know.
so.
I know he was chomping down on ice cubes every time we went back to the apartment, and all the signs I didn't know at the time of diabetes, like constant everywhere we go. I gotta pee. I'm like, something wrong with you? What's going on? You got bladder ears, bud. You're like peeing everywhere we go. And yeah, I just barely actually befriended him on Facebook too. I'll have to catch up with him. But anyway, it was getting hard to teach with him because we'd have these super good spiritual first discussions, and I'm like, okay, we got to get out of here. Can I use your bathroom? Like every time. And I'm like, can we hold it just for a little bit longer? Can he get out of this house? Because then I'm carrying on conversations about something else with these people, and we're not leaving them with that nice spiritual high I'd like to have. But I guess he had some things happening he needed some help with. But so the car deal, yeah, we got on the train from the mission home, and we got off in Aberdeen, and the zone leader said, "Here's your car keys. There's the car, and here's a map." And I'm like, "Sweet." I handed the car keys to Elder Allred and said, "Here you go." And he looked at me. He's like, "I thought you were kidding." No. We get in the car and we sit down. He's like, "Well, now what?" I said, yeah, we better pray." we had a prayer before we took off, and I pulled out the map, and I'm like, "So this is where we are. This is where we need to get to." And so I'll lead the way. But I mean, just listen to me. I'm like, can you imagine? Poor guy driving on the wrong side of the road, wrong side of the car. I felt bad for him. We hit a roundabout. I mean, we hit like 6 of them, but we hit one that had, I think, 6 different outlets on it. And I think that one we went around twice. Because I'm like, it's not this one, it's not this one. Ah, crap. We did it again. And then finally, as soon as we hit the country, I'm like, we're good now. We're
Once
good.
Out of Aberdeen, you're all right. Just head up the coast. But
Pretty countryside. Yeah, I remember I didn't know a lot of people there, but I remember Jim Peden. Remember him?
Oh yeah.
What a great guy. That guy cracks me up. He told me some funny stories. Naturally, he'd do it right in the middle of sacrament meeting, get me laughing.
Yep, that sounds right.
Super good dude. He was the poor guy was undergoing some hormone therapy, and it was estrogen. I know he was having to take a lot of estrogen, so it was transforming his body, less of a man.
Yeah, but he would laugh about that.
He would. Well, so he went down to the beach when I was there, and he's like, Charlie, it was Elder Fife. It was a beautiful day, so I took my shirt off, and I was just walking in the sun, just taking it all in. And I look over, and this lady looked at me, and she's like, "Well, if she's going to take her shirt off, I'm going to take mine off too." And he's like, "Oh no, I hurried and put my shirt back on and got out of there."
That's a Jim Peden story.
Oh, dude. So Jim, he says, I was instrumental in converting my best friend to the gospel. And his best friend had died since. And he tells me this right in the middle of a sacrament meeting. He's like, Elder Fife, my best friend was sitting in that very chair you're sitting in right now. And this is back when the church had one-piece garments, And he says, we had trap doors that we had to undo to go to the bathroom. And there's these great big buttons. And he says, my friend leaned over to me right in the middle of the sacrament, just like we are right now, and says, Jim, this church better be true because right now my butt is killing me. And Jim's just like, he didn't say butt, all right? And it was loud. So, typical Jim. Love that guy to death. Super, him and his wife, good people. Really good people.
Definitely.
Now that was kind of the end of the road for me. And there's a lot of things that happen in between in different areas, but
good road.
I'm pretty strong-headed, so I butted heads with some of the leadership. I won't lie, not in the mission necessarily, but the church. Stake president and I went head-to-head in a meeting once, and a bishop a few times, and there are some of the weird ideas that come out. Sometimes you feel like you're Apostle Paul having to straighten out the people of Corinth, like that's not how it works. That's not what we do. We got told off. Elder Grenevicius, myself, I think Elder Bradbury, and I don't know who Elder G was serving with, but we were in a correlation meeting with the stake president, and he kind of got after us for trying to involve members in missionary work. He's like, you guys expect too much of the members of the church here. I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? And he says, well, you expect them to go out and knock doors with you and talk to people. That's just asking too much of them. I'm like, how do you figure? And he says, well, what would you do? And I'm like, well, back home, the ward mission leader would come up to you and put his arm around you and say, the Lord wants you to go with the missionaries on Wednesday night at 7:00. And you'd say, okay, I guess I'm driving. And you go pick up the missionaries and you'd go out and do the work, whatever they wanted done. And he's like, oh, yeah, right. And I'm like, you don't know me. You don't know where I'm from. You know nothing about me. I'm like, that's how it is. And he's like, yeah, I don't believe that. And I'm like, oh, I don't really care. And Elder Grenevicius, very, very staunch member, also a convert. And I remember him and I were like out of our chair in this stake president's office, like giving him the pointer. And anyway, I talked to President Vereen's a few days later about that experience, and he's like, we're really struggling with leadership over here. And he says, I was supposed to be to that meeting, and I got lost. I couldn't find the church building, so I ended up giving up and went back. And he says, but if I was there, I'd have punched him right in the nose. He's like, I would have put up with that. I was like, oh, I'm glad you got our back, President. Like, big. Talk about the differences between President Vereen's and Wilkinson. Wilkinson, man, every interview, that guy out of his chair, like, Elder Fife, and I'd be like, President, why don't you sit down, have a seat, please? No, I want to stand. And he just really all business and power and authority, and then President Vereen's was just a lot more gentler and easier going. It was interesting to see the contrast in the leadership, and both effective. Yeah. I do have one last story. I don't want to keep you. I could talk all night, but President Vereen's, one day I went and saw him for interviews, and he just looked stressed. It's like worse than I've ever seen, right? Like, President, are you doing okay? Because you don't look like you're doing okay. He's like, I got this thing that's just haunting me right now. I'm like, well, what's up? He says, well, there's a college in Glasgow that I guess some of our missionaries went and did some missionary work at, and it's kind of created a little bit of an issue. I'm like, oh, what happened? He says, well, I guess a couple of our missionaries were at the Bible college and they were stuffing books with some literature from our church, you know. Oh, I'm sorry about that. That was me. He looks at me and says, what? I said, well, we had a media referral. We got to this Bible college in Glasgow. Some guy ordered a video, a DVD, so we went to deliver it. And I said, they have that place locked down. I mean, you go in and they make you wait, and these kids live in the top tower of this college. That's their apartment. And then they have all their teaching going on in the building. Yeah, it's locked down. It's like an MTC. It's tight. I said, so I was sitting in the lobby and I was looking at the clock, like, man, 20 minutes later, I'm still sitting here, like, yeah, just put a card in this book, a card in this book, you know, teach at every opportunity, President. And he looked at me and he just started laughing. He's like, I could see that. And I said, so I ticked him off, did I? And he says, yeah, I guess a little bit. And I said, well, I do apologize. He says, it's fine. Don't worry about it. His whole countenance changed. You know, it was funny.
That's great.
Yeah, good times, man. Good times.
Definitely. Well, we really appreciate you coming on. I mean, we do this. We're going on 2 years now of doing this, and people just keep coming, and we love it. So
What's
it's not possible without you.
What's your count up to now?
You'll be episode about 178, 180, somewhere in there. So
good deal. Well, I hope you carry it on. I've got a great uncle that's 82 years old, served his mission in Scotland. I would love to get him on the podcast. Boy, that'd give you a total different. In fact, he served with Wilkinson.
There you go.
They were in the same district, but he had been in Vietnam as well, so it might be a little risque. I don't know, but I think we ought to try to get him on this.
I'd love it. Yeah,
way different.
You can help him get on the technology and everything, and we'd be glad to set up something like that. That'd be great.
Yeah. I'll see if I can work that out. He was having some computer issues the other day, which, you know, I used to work in a nursing home. We'd cut all the buttons off the remote controls just so they wouldn't mess with the TVs, but can't do that with a computer.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, that'd be great.
Well, I hope you two keep it up. You know, I think it's pretty neat and pretty important. We carry on these memories, and the beauty of them getting the temple now. I thought hell had frozen over. I heard that at conference. What? Oh boy, the end is soon. That's what I told my wife. I thought I'd never see that in my lifetime. So
that's funny.
I know.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. We're all excited about it for sure.
Sure.
And as part of this, you know, I want to express our love for you as our brother in Scotland. There's a certain bond that comes with having served there.
You bet.
Not everybody has the opportunity, and it's a unique one when you get it. So
it
really
is.
Appreciate it.
Elder Nelson, you need to get him on here too. He was with Elder Gilmore at the time, if I remember.
Been in contact with him.
What the heck is going on there?
You shout him out.
Oh, I will.
Yeah,
I will. He needs to get on here.
Yeah, and I will say, you know, you've talked about getting in touch with former companions. Anybody we've had on here that we've recorded with, we obviously have their contact for. So, you know, if you yourself or if you're listening out there and thinking, man, I'd love to know how to get a hold of Charlie Fife, like hit us up. I'm 51spylaw.com, and we'll make it happen. So we're kind of building this network as we go, but it's definitely, you know, some of us have been out of contact with people for years, and just being able to find them is, we'd love to make that connection for people if you want. So
yeah, I know there's a lot of guys have hit some roadblocks in their lives, be it health problems or marriages or whatever it is, and I think sometimes that's what holds them back. But
sure.
And some have left the path, you know. But I guarantee you that the experiences of the mission are still in there. So
Yep.
whatever walks of life, it don't matter. You're right. There is a brother and a sisterhood for that matter.
Yes.
You know.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
But we really appreciate it. Give you a cheerio for tonight.
All right. Thanks for taking the time.
We'll definitely let you know when this is published and out there so you can share it around as well.
Super. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you.
Take care. Yep.
Bye.
Bye-bye.